Good evening, and welcome to the Greenfield Public Schools School Committee meeting. This is our regular meeting for the month of May, Wednesday, May 12th, 2021 at 6 p.m. This meeting is being held fully remotely and in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, CLC 30A, Section 20. We'll start with a roll call, please. Secretary Johnson-Musad.
Member Karen? Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Present.
Member Hollins? Secretary Johnson-Musad here. Chair Prayati?
Here.
Member Wall?
Here.
We have, Mayor Wiedegardner. We have a quorum.
Okay, so we do have a quorum. We do not have yet Mayor Wiedegardner and Member Karen. Okay.
Or Member Hollins?
Okay,
I just
so we do have-
texted Member Hollins to say that we are starting at 6 p.m. I realize that, not anyway.
Okay. So we'll call to order at 6:01 p.m. I do have a lot of background noise, so I'm going to mute everyone. Okay, so I'm going to look for a motion right off the bat to move the report of the student representatives to the school committee to the next item of business, which would be item number 2, ahead of the report from the business manager. Can I get a motion to that?
So moved.
And a
Johnson-Musad?
second?
Second.
A second from Member Wall. Can we just go ahead and do a roll call vote on that, please?
Yes. Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Yes.
Secretary Johnson-Musad? I'm a yes. Chair Prayati?
Yes.
Member Wall?
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Tim Toomey, if you would be so kind, welcome to the school committee meeting. Please go ahead with your report.
Hi. Unfortunately, Danny wasn't able to make it today, so it's just going to be me. But to jump right in, we'll start with Student Council. Student Council will be holding our e-board elections this Sunday, and this Saturday we'll be attending the WMASC Spring Conference virtually. We'll hear from a keynote speaker, Kevin Duda, who is an alumni from GHS and now is a producer and was part of the original cast in 2 Broadway musicals, Book of Mormon and Beautiful. They will attend student-led workshops, and we wish Grace Lantada luck as she runs for secretary for WMASC. We also want to say thank you to Willa Scapis for her year as president for the region. The class cup will be ending next week, and the winning grade will have an opportunity to go to the Greenfield Garden Cinema on Saturday, May 29th for a free show at 9 a.m. GHS Key Club is so grateful to everyone who participated in Say Something Week, whether they donated to the food drive, participated in wellness activities in health or PE classes, or celebrated a trusted adult or upstander. Every little bit helps. Key Club will continue their initiative to promote inclusiveness and kindness in our GHS community. Key Club's collaboration with Greenfield Kiwanis to distribute books to area preschoolers was a success, with over 240 books donated to children to bring home. Officer elections for 2022 to 2021 to 22 for the club will be this month and will be announced soon. This spring brings the 11th annual Greenfield Public Schools Film Festival. The screening will be held remotely with a film program featuring a range of narrative and documentary projects from Greenfield students. This year's festival will be scaled back due to the fact that most of the time spent was remote, but it will still be a wonderful opportunity to celebrate the creative accomplishments of our students in spite of immense challenges they faced. Tune in on Friday, June 11th at 6:30 for a night of student-made films. A link will be forthcoming as the date approaches. Green Wave athletics are going strong. Baseball, softball, boys and girls track, and boys and girls tennis are competing and have just started their seasons. The records currently stand at girls tennis being 0-1, boys tennis 1-0, baseball 0-2, softball 1-1, boys track 0-0, and girls track 1-0. To find the schedule of games, please go to miaa.net for schedules. Fans are allowed with the proper masking and social distance requirements. Remember, school grounds masks are required. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Appreciate the update. Always great to have you with us. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay, we are going to move on now to the report from the business manager. We're going to cover both fiscal year 21 budget updates and same for fiscal year 22. Andy, go ahead.
Thank you. You have in your packets the FY21 update. We are beginning the year-end closing process. I should say continuing, because we've started that earlier as we normally do. Some of the things that we're going to be doing as we discuss at Budget Finance Subcommittee, we're gathering up the normal prepaying of sped tuitions as has been practiced, as well as going to be talking with the administration about one-time purchases to potentially help with things either that they haven't had in the past, or just needs and that are not going to necessarily be compounding. So those are things that for those that are on a budget finance subcommittee that we have talked about exploring. So we're going to continue on with that, and also potentially look for things. Some of these one-time things now would be a combination of what things that they might not have had previously, but also things that could potentially help offset FY22. So I can answer any questions regarding that, or
I have a question, Andy.
Sure.
Are there any, this is going to be crazy, are there any unusual things that we need to be aware of that aren't that are not COVID related unusual?
No, I mean, that's actually not a crazy question. No, but no, actually, it's you know, all things going according to plan, I guess I would say, which is to say that nothing has gone according to plan. We've between the hybrid model, if anything, you'll be seeing throughout on the operating side some savings in some areas that we normally wouldn't have had savings in. Some of the utilities, I mean, I shouldn't say utilities, but you know, on the maintenance side, substitutes as we've talked about prior. You know, so there some of these areas where I'll say that's budgetarily, obviously not ideally for what we'd want. Budgetarily, that's going to be favorable to us as we close out the year, that we didn't need to use as many subs as we had anticipated. So, but no, other than that, we're doing fine.
So when I look at the, and I'm sure that we'll get into this in budget because I know my committee. When I'm looking at some of these, so let's see, for Four Corners, this would be on page, I don't know what page. Oh. On the Munis report,
Yep.
page, I guess it's page 2 of the Munis
Yes.
report. I'm looking
Yeah,
at Four Corners and I'm seeing some big negative numbers that were over encumbered.
So-
For example, para 4C.
Right. So here's where, if I may, I know we talked about this with Ways and Means, and I should have clarified. I have presented to the Budget Finance Subcommittee and the full committee budget transfers to realign the budget. This was back in October, November, and for obvious, I'll say various reasons, all legitimate, not to belittle things up, but they have been presented. We discussed it, but there was never a formal vote to realign the budget. So I have, for all intents and purposes, a realigned budget that, you know, I've done periodic refreshes as obviously things that have occurred through the year have pushed that agenda item off to yet to be, you know, held meeting for various reasons. But, you know, for all intents and purposes, if you were to look at what I have as a realigned budget that we were looking for formal vote of school committee on, those negatives would have been taken care of.
All right, so then as the chair of the budget subcommittee, I'm going to suggest and request that we have a meeting on Tuesday, the 18th. Does that work for you, Andy?
That depends on the time.
Okay. So after this meeting, let's get together and figure out if we can do that. And if nothing else, our community should look out for a budget meeting being posted for next week. Does that make sense to everyone? Hearing nothing, I'm gonna
Yes.
say let's do that. So tomorrow I'm gonna get in contact with Laura and the superintendent and we'll figure it out.
Good.
All right, great. I'll write it in my calendar right now. And my guess
Other
is any of the questions
Yeah.
that I have to follow up on that are going to be delved into in the budget meeting, so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you both. Are there other questions, discussion around the budget for Andy?
I have a question.
Please go
I
ahead.
see we still have encumbered the $31,992 for the truant officer, which I think is the school resource officer that we're not. I see Susan Ekstrom shaking her hand. This is my question. Can someone explain to me that line item?
I can absolutely, unless Andy or Judy, maybe you guys should instead.
Well, Member Hollins has her hand up, so I'll turn it over to her and just either affirm, reaffirm. I doubt I'll have to correct, but whatever it is that she
Collins,
said.
did you have a different question, or were you going to talk about the truant officer?
I wanted to address the truant officer
Oh,
question.
please go ahead.
I just want to remind the committee that many meetings ago, we added a line item to the budget by school committee vote. So there would be two lines there, truant officer, and another one for attendance officer, because they kept getting confused. Thank you.
Therein lies the rub.
But I think I know a little bit more about what Glenn is asking. So the truant officer and the SRO are two different positions. The truant officer is the person who would say, go to someone's house, why haven't you been there? They are solely focused on getting our kids to be in school and finding out why they are not at school. That's all they do. The SRO has a completely different task. They are never the same person.
Okay.
Correct.
And so
You'll see that the amount is budgeted, but there's nothing expended. And so the thought was in meeting with Member Hollins was just talking about was that I'm going to call it as it's an account naming thing where we were going to change the name of that account since we don't have a truant officer. We were going to change that to say attendance officer.
Right.
So that was the plan, and admittedly, we just had not. It's on the list of things to do.
And I will just follow up with that. There's understandable confusion about that, and I've actually every time that this comes around, I have asked the same question to make sure that I get the same answer every time, and I do. So that's what the difference is.
but we used to have money allocated for a school resource officer, and then we decided not to do that. We had some discussion at that meeting about whether we would allocate money for a racial justice project at the high school. That was voted down. Instead, we voted as a committee to direct the budget committee to look at how we might resource some racial justice oriented activities in the schools. I don't know, has that discussion ever happened? And what happened to the funds that used to be there for the school resource officer?
So I will answer briefly, and then I'm going to have Judy and Andy correct me in anything that I'm wrong. The school resource officer is a position that is required by the state, and we don't have the ability to say that no, that position cannot exist. It's part of your funding. That's part of the parameters with which funding is given. And I had a community member point out some other things to me that I'm not going to comment on because I haven't been able to confirm or deny if it was true that the state has decided it doesn't have to be an SRO. It can be an SRO-like position, In any case, from here, I'm going to hand it over to Andy because he is much more informed on what that means. I'm quite certain.
So, my understanding was, and I would actually also again defer to those that were here last year, was that was not the SRO one of these positions that was whether or not it was going to be on the city side or the school side of the budget. That was my understanding. So, and I see Member Hollins nodding and raising her hand.
Yeah,
Well,
there was the school's obligation to the position is only half of the actual cost, and the other portion of it used to come from the police department budget, and they in fiscal year 21 did not fund the police department portion of the school resource officer, and that decision was made after our budget was already put together with our half of it funded. I don't know if Member Hollins, did you want to add something?
My recollection is the actual law for SRO says it is a police department position. And as you said, it was an agreement with the city that it would be shared. Before it was in our budget at all, we always had a police officer within minutes if we called for one. But there was a new law about this. There's also a law about attendance officers, and the school committee appoints attendance officers also. And we did decide to have two different line items since it's two different laws and two different requirements. But you're correct. I don't know what the city did, but we decided to cost share the position. And I just want to make one other comment, because the money, to Glenn's question, sometimes if something isn't spent, it doesn't mean it's there to spend, because there may be another place in the budget where you've overspent because extraordinary things happened. And I think that may have happened in the year where people said, let's transfer this money because we didn't use it. But I think there were other line items where we had to spend much more than anticipated. So in effect, it really wasn't there anymore in terms of the total budget. I think that's also true.
Thank you, Member Hollins. That's almost identical to my recollection and understanding of it as well. And I see that Vice Chair Ekstrom is also nodding her head. Glenn, did you want to comment or further ask more questions?
Well, I do, but I see the superintendent's hand is up, so I don't know.
Oh, Dr. Hull, please go ahead. Thank you, Glenn.
There have been some changes to the law around school resource officers that allow the superintendent to think about the position a little bit differently in terms of more of a community policing model versus a law enforcement model to just kind of build relationships with students and whatnot. So again, that's something that I think once the new superintendent comes on board, that's probably a conversation that you all may want to have with that person.
And has the budget committee, oh, do your hands back up, superintendent? Is that on purpose or not? Okay. And has the budget committee been able to follow through with the school committee's request that they take a look at racial justice work in the schools from a budget perspective? And this is back from June, but I know it's been a busy year. I'm wondering if the dust is settling enough to follow through on that.
You know, I will speak for myself. We've talked about it, but the overarching issue was that the funds were needed to be used in other places. We can't, and when this was first brought to me, and again, I'm going to speak freely, when this was first brought to me sort of outside of school committee meetings, I had asked the group that was really promoting this, you have to sort of decide what you want. Is it that you want there to be racial justice programs in the school district, period? Or is it that you want racial justice programs and that money has to be designated from the SRO funding? And the answer was the second, that was what was wanted. And I very truthfully said, I think that you're not going to get that. I think you're be much more wise to say we'd like this type of programming and not put any constraints on where the funding came from.
I'll just say one more
that's
thing,
just my opinion.
and then I'll be done.
Yeah.
But my concern is that as a committee, we're voting to do things and then they're not being done. And so, I mean, that's a fine perspective that you have. It's just that the committee directed the budget committee to have this on an agenda and discuss it and bring it back to the full committee. And I haven't seen anything on that, so I think it's worthwhile having those discussions in a budget committee. I understand that with COVID, there's been a lot on our plates and some things have gotten moved off, but I do think it's still important to honor the votes of the committee when we say go and put this on an agenda and have a discussion and bring it back. Let's not just have a discussion in the full committee and share our opinions, but actually do what the committee has voted to do.
I'd like to say that two things. First, I completely agree with Glenn that if we vote to do something, we should do it and make it important. But the second thing I want to say is if you watch our warrants and what's being spent, there is a priority being placed on expenditures for social and racial justice in this month's warrant. I think I noticed $2,500 the superintendent has done an in-service on embedded racism in the curriculum for 50 people or something like that. And in the last warrant, there were new social study texts on studying racism at the middle school. So if you look carefully at what's happening in the district, I think Newton, not too long ago, got a whole new set of library books focusing on racism. And anyway, there's a lot of money being spent on this. It isn't maybe in one line item, but you can see that the school district is taking an interest in this, from training to materials at all the schools. And I still agree with Glenn that when we vote something, it should come back up and it should happen. Thank you.
Discussion. Thank you all for that. Secretary Johnson-Musat, do you have further questions, comments?
No, thank you. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And seeing as there's a budget subcommittee meeting probably on the table for next week, looks like you got more than one agenda item, which
I already was writing it down.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions about either of the fiscal year budgets for Mr. Paquette? I'm not hearing anything. Awesome. So we will thank you, Andy. We'll let you go.
Well,
And we'll see you soon, I'm sure. Appreciate all your work.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the report of the business manager. We're on to item 3, approval of the school committee minutes from April 14, 2021. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So move, Jean.
Councilmember Wall, in a second.
Second, Mayor Wiedegartner.
Mayor Wiedegartner has joined us. I also noticed that Member Karen is here as well. Member Karen, can you confirm? Just give a shout out for us quick. Yes, maybe. I did see her on this. Yeah, she's there. Okay. And we have our motion, we have our second. Any discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, let's do a roll call vote to approve.
Member Karen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Yes.
Member Hollins?
Yes.
Secretary Johnson-Musad? I'm a yes. Chair Prayati?
Yes.
Member Wall?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you.
We got the mayor, hun.
Oh, sorry
Okay.
about that, Mayor.
The mayor abstains because I was not at the meeting.
All right.
Thank you. And now we're into public comment for the evening. I want to draw folks' attention who are with us at home or elsewhere that we have put the policy, the full policy for school committee public comment in the body of tonight's agenda. And that policy is quick and easy, but important to be followed. And how we do public comment, so everyone is aware, is we'll first start with folks putting an indication that they'd like to comment in the chat box if they're with us on the WebEx and they're able to do so. After that is exhausted, we will move to folks who are wishing to comment by voice over the phone and aren't with us on the WebEx. So I'm looking for anyone who may have indicated in the chat, just put your name that you would like to make a public comment. Anyone? I'm not seeing anyone. Member Johnson-Musad, are you seeing anyone?
Nope.
Okay. And let's just move right into anyone who wants to indicate by voice that they would like to make a public comment. You can do so now. Again, I'm not hearing anyone. It is a small group with us today. There's only a handful of members of the public who are here and able to comment. So I guess we'll move away from public comment. Please don't put anything in there unless you're planning to comment in the chat. That can be a violation of the open meeting law, even though it's well intended. So we're going to move on to, we've moved up item number 5. We already heard from Shane Toomey, and we're going to go on now to item number 6, our administration reports. And first up with us, he's been so patient. We have the, is it Superintendent of Public Works? Is that what you are? Director of Public Works, Marlo? I don't know your title. But Marlo Warner's here with us tonight to talk a little bit about what is happening with DPW projects that may impact the schools. If you'll recall, I think it was at not our April meeting, but the March meeting, there were some things that came up indicating there's a Sanderson Street project that's on the schedule to start soon or has already started. And then we'll hear from Marlo, and then we'll open it up for any questions and discussion from the school committee. So thank you for joining us, Marlo. You can go ahead.
Thank you for having me. And if it pleases the chair and the rest of the committee, I'll give a rundown of the project, the scope, the timing, where we're at, where we're going, the communication piece. As we know, it's going to be a major project affecting many entities on Sanderson Street. So, basically, I'm glad we held off a little bit because it passed City Council. It's officially appropriated now. So, yes, it's a real project that's going to happen. So the project cost is about $1.5 million, thereabouts for the numbers.
Marla, I'm sorry, may I interrupt? Can you just, for people who aren't quite paying attention all the time, expand on what that project is?
Yeah, I'll get into that as I get into the scope. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the project scope as far as the area covered will be the full length of Sanderson Street from from Federal to High, then High to Parkway. So it's going to cover from Federal all the way to just below Poet Seat. The project consists of a lot of underground replacement of infrastructure. There's 3 pieces to the project. There's water, there's sewer, there's roadways, sidewalks, etc. So there's going to be major replacement of the sewer infrastructure, some lining of some pipes. One of the main factors is a 102-year-old water main that runs from Federal to Parkway. That's in today's standard undersized. It's 6-inch. We're going to increase that to 8-inch. So the timing, so that as we get into the timing and the communication piece, we've had it completely engineered out under last year's appropriations. We intend on bidding this project out fall to late fall, possibly into the winter. That's the best timing for a spring start and best cost for the city. So the duration of the project is going to be most of next summer. So to back the bus up a little bit, when we bid the project out, there's going to be parameters put under the bidding portion of it. As we work with the schools will still be in session. Can we start up in the Parkway area, so on and so forth, so we can least disrupt the schools. We have city offices, as you know, we have the hospital, we have a very large medical office building. and a factory all on one street here. So we're juggling a lot of things, a lot of communication, and it's all going to come together, and it's all going to be perfect, right? So we're going to try. But I wanted everyone to rest assured that there's been a lot of discussion as this project has developed. And you know, the main pieces were what I just explained. It's going to affect so many entities, and how we're going to interface with all those entities and communicate throughout. We've got plenty of time to develop that, but my thinking right now within the department is we'll form some sort of communication team, as you will. You know, a member of the school department, a member of the city offices, a member from the hospital, so that we can triage the information out as the project goes. Or there's a triage as the project develops if we run into any, you know, particular issues or whatever, so that we can get the information out to everybody. Communication is going to be absolutely huge on this project. So, you know, now that is actually going to happen, that all is beginning. So, but rest assured, we've got everybody in mind. We've got the timing of the school department, you know, the school systems being open. So the project scope is basically what we call curb to curb, from curb line to curb line. We did add one small piece to the project, which has been an issue all my years with the DPW. Many of you will know what I'm talking about. We got an icy sidewalk at the end of the entranceway to the pickup and drop off area, the first base line of the ball field. It's the low point of the field. Water's always crossing there into the parking lot. It's a constant icing problem all winter long. There's no drainage there. So we're going to implement a catch basin and drainage and tie it into the streetway drainage there. So hopefully we eliminate that problem. You know, that particular small item turns into a large maintenance issue and a liability in the winter time. So we did incorporate that into the project. It also consists of a lot of sidewalk replacement up in the area from High to Parkway. They're in really poor shape. They're blacktop, so on and so forth. That basically summarizes in general the project. If you have any particular questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
That was a great overview. Thank you. Do we have questions from school committee members? Member Ekstrom, go ahead.
When you say next summer, do you mean summer of 22 or summer of 21?
22. We're talking calendar year.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, you never know.
No, I know.
Other
I
questions?
have projects everywhere. Calendar, fiscal, they're everywhere. So good question.
I guess maybe I have a question. City planning and construction, does that get involved in any sort of, do they get updates of this project or projects like this? I don't know how all that works.
Yeah, I believe that's probably why I'm here today. I see that Susan and members of the committee are here. This all started way back when with the Capital Committee, this project, and as it developed, I do give updates with certain projects, and I'm sure that Jean's going to invite me along to give project updates on this particular project. Maybe it should be one big meeting because it's a massive project and affects so many, but absolutely.
Yeah, great. That's good to know, because I asked mainly because I know we do have, you know, a seat on that committee, and we also have a member who is the chair of the committee. So knowing that they're going to get updates and anything that might impact the schools that's different or unexpected, we would hear that. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other school committee questions?
I have a question. I feel like I've been seeing more and more on whenever sidewalks are being replaced there, they seem to have more accessibility features built in and features to make them more walkable. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about walkability and the new sidewalks and everything.
Yeah, every project that we touch, when it comes to a paving project, we evaluate the sidewalks. Sometimes the sidewalks, although they're not rated the poorest in the city, we have to upgrade them when there's no tree belt, because before we pave the road, we want to incorporate the new sidewalk so that we don't have to dig up a fairly new road to to replace the sidewalk at a later date. Everything we touched, the safety improvement project, which was very important, which incorporated some highlights or some enhancements for the schools. Federal Street School and the middle school now are officially school zones with flashing lights. And we put in some rapid flash beacon assemblies at crosswalks on the way up Federal Street. And every last one of them is upgraded to ADA compliance. So everything we touch, we bring it up to code as we go. It's the best way to do it, the smart way to do it, and to the dollars the best we can with what we have.
Thank you.
Mayor Rita Gardner, go ahead.
Unmuted. And Marlo can certainly chime in. He did say this project, though, is curb to curb. So that does not include sidewalks, if I'm correct, right? Director Warner?
The sidewalks from Federal to High are in pretty good condition, concrete. Yeah. The sidewalks that will be addressed more so than any will be
are High to Parkway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just so everybody understands, the sidewalks where it's important on Sanderson Street that border the middle school won't be disturbed, but they also won't be repaired if there are any reasons to have them be repaired during this project. So I think he mentioned that the sidewalks are from High to Parkway. So
yeah, I'm happy to say we don't have to touch the walks around the middle school there.
I didn't think so. But.
They're probably in the highest rating we have in the city. So hooray.
With respect to the icing over place, I mean, people do walk there. So
yeah,
that's a good thing that you've included that.
Yeah, a couple of questions that have come up, if I may add. I don't want to take up too much of your evening, but there's been talk about Mass DOT, the state, and the federal government, as well as the city, are recognizing pedestrian, cyclists, walkability. That goes along with all projects when we look at them. And the question did come up a couple of times about bike lanes and so on and so forth on Sanderson Street as we did this project. That was looked at early on as we were developing the project. And in a simple response to that is we don't have the road width and the way it would affect pickup and drop off. We feel with the road widths narrowing them to the point with bike lanes, we'll actually be harming cyclists more than we'd be helping them, if you will. So I wanted everyone to know that we look at all of that, especially around the schools. And in this certain instance, it just won't fit for us or the standards.
Excellent points. Thank you. Other questions from school committee members? And I would open up like any other questions. Yeah, Member Hollins, please go ahead.
I was just going to mention, and I'm glad Marlo mentioned this, that there was discussion about bike lanes and students, and that there wasn't room, which is what he just said. But part of that discussion was also whether or not in the future, at that particular building, the middle school building, there might be some way to carve a bike lane around the front of the school, kind of in and out, so that people could get off. Anyway, I was just going to mention that planning and construction talked about that. Thank you.
Yeah. And the one piece is Federal Street already has incorporated bike lanes, which we obviously know is a major artery to the middle school. So that's pretty helpful in that regard.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm not hearing any. Director Warner, it has been awesome to have you with us, and I will let everyone know now it's our plan to have you come back, I think in the fall at a minimum, to just ramp up for snow removal season, ice season, all of those fun things we've just left behind.
Why? Why would you start talking about that right now? That's not right.
Hey, I'm from Rochester, New York, man. We talk about that stuff all the time.
Okay, I'm from Green Bay. We don't talk about it at all.
Yeah, Chairperson Freddie, I'm glad you're allowed to get away with the word snow. I'm not with the boss, so. So if I could just speak to that for just a second,
Sure.
I would love, I don't mind at all, come back even quarterly, especially as this project ramps up to give an update, or anything else. The DPW is always here to support the schools. We're behind the scenes, doing a lot of things for the school department. And I certainly don't mind coming and speaking to it, with you folks. And especially as we're coming out of COVID and back in person, I look forward to the fall large staff meeting to visit and run through the complete snow and ice protocol of the DPW. I think it's very helpful for the staff and so on and so forth, what we're doing at 4 a.m. and how we brainstorm and how every storm is different and how we fight the storm. So I'm rambling. I'm a little overtired, so I'm gonna check
Yes,
out.
I do see.
Wait, I have a question. I have a question.
Urgently trying to ask one
I
more
have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna poke the bear. We have some capital projects that are out there. Any idea when those things will start getting moved on?
Depending on what projects you're talking about, I've been in communication with Dr. Hool and Alan Schmidt, even as of today.
Okay.
And we're working out some processes in order to assist the school department in moving their capital projects forward where we can.
Wonderful. I've done my duty for the voters of this community by poking the bear on that. Thank you.
I can also answer that question. Mr. Paquette and Mr. Schmidt and I met last Friday to take a look at what's in the budget for these plans, what needs to go to bid, what needs to be quoted, and to have a plan moving forward for this summer. So we should have some further information for you next time we meet.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And again, Marlo, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you back here soon.
All right, you're welcome anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You as well.
Okay, so we'll move on next to the superintendent's report, which, if you're following along, there is a written report in the packet of materials for tonight, as well as I think the superintendent will take some time to run us through the items with us. Go ahead, Dr. Hool, please.
Thank you, Chair Proietti. I am going to try and share a screen here. I think we got it. There we go. So just, Chair Proietti said in your packet, there is a written report. So I'm just going to kind of give the highlights this evening, and there will be some points where I will be stopping and just asking for either your input or your vote on some things. So just to update you, before we start, just an announcement for you. The Massachusetts Teacher of the Year program, which celebrates teachers who are exemplary across the Commonwealth, have named their semifinalists, and one of them is Greenfield Public Schools' very own Jamie Witherell, who is a second grade teacher at Newton School. So she is in the running for this prestigious representation for the Commonwealth, along with 10 of her closest friends. She's had to undergo a rigorous process of submitting materials to the state, being interviewed, and so on. And now at the semifinalist provision also includes some observation of her teaching, et cetera, et cetera. The final decision will be made this summer, but we certainly are very proud of Jamie for having gotten to this particular point. So I just wanted to make sure that the committee was aware of that, and congratulations to Jamie for getting this far as a semifinalist for the Massachusetts Teacher of the Year. So just to update you on our return to in-person learning, as you know, the Commissioner of Education has deemed that we return to full in-person learning and asked that elementary students come back on April 5th, which we accomplished in grades pre-K through 4, and then had mandated that middle schoolers come back on April 28th. And 8th grade was included in that band of expectations, so we decided just to bring the high school back anyway, and just have all of our students back. So that did happen on April 28th, so we are all in. And, again, some of those first few days of school hiccups But lots of parents were smiling in the parking lots those first few days while I was helping to direct some traffic at the high school. It was nice to see the kids back and just see the parents happy to have them back, as for sure. Within that, just to kind of update you that, again, we want to try to remind members of the public that coming back to in-person mode, if you are currently remote, is not something we can flip on a dime. And so that there does need to be some prearrangement that happens ahead of time. Obviously, if students want to come back in, it means the reconfiguration of the classroom space, the reconfiguration of other common areas that might be impacted so that we can maintain our spacing requirements. For our high school in particular, we're getting to a point where it would actually require the moving of classroom spaces into other areas. So it's not something we can turn a switch and have a student come in. It has to be prearranged. Right now, what we are suggesting is that there is a cutoff of June 1st, because it's about 4 weeks by the time we take care of space configurations, provisioning for meals, provisioning for transportation, and all of the other pieces that go with it. So right now, we're about at June 1st for students coming back. After that point, it really gets a little bit dicey with end of the year. So that's our recommendation with regard to that. So, I don't know if the committee wants to weigh in or ask any questions about that June 1st date, but I'd be happy to answer those.
Go ahead if you have questions, folks. I can't see everyone, so I think we can go on.
All right, moving right along. The other thing too is that, as Mr. Paquette mentioned earlier, we are saving money on substitutes, but we're also having a hard time finding substitutes as well as filling some other positions. And we do have some vacancies that are currently open in the Greenfield Public Schools. It's a great place to work and to learn. And so we've tried to make our openings a little more prominent. So if you go to our website, look at that by the magic of a click. There is right on the front page a click here for employment opportunities button. You go in there. There we go. And Lauren Rice has done a nice job kind of jazzing up this page a little bit and making the positions. You can see this is the list that comes from School Spring, which is what we use to post things. But for people who might have difficulty with School Spring, we've also taken some of our positions and put them down at the bottom here so that they can get right to an application and try and make it as easy as possible. It's a great place for the community. It's a great place for people to be able to be a part of the community and work in our schools and work with our kids and our staff. And so I would certainly encourage members of the public that now is as good a time as any to apply. We particularly are looking for substitutes. We're looking for some folks in food service, and we are looking for crossing guards, and that's like an hour at the beginning and an hour at the end, and you get the middle of the day to yourself. So please do apply, because we can use certainly some extra hands right now. So that's sort of the update on the re-entry to school. Our kindergarten registration is under full swing, and our registrar, Sierra Rother, has set up some evenings in order to help working families get children registered. And so I just wanted, again, to make sure that the public is aware that Sierra is available tomorrow night, as a matter of fact, from 4 to 6 p.m. right here at Central Office. And she will take parental registrations for kindergartners coming in. And next Tuesday from 5 to 7, and then the following Thursday from 4 to 6. Again, just to give parents who work during the school day an opportunity to be able to register their students. I also know that Sierra has made arrangements with the Y to go and set up a table there and help register incoming kindergartners as well.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are people able to register online?
They are, but it's a little bit hard to navigate online. So Sierra's, you know, if you contact our office and Sierra can help walk people through the process. So yeah, that can happen that way. But she's more than happy to be helpful with that. You know, she's got a nice way with parents and families, and so
of course.
she's been doing a great job. So you know, certainly contact the office and she can help walk you through the online process. But again, part of it is that you have to have a copy of immunization records and birth certificate and all that kind of stuff. So if people want to bring paperwork in,
Yeah.
she can make copies and we can be good to go that way.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So that's the return to in-person stuff. School choice. I did poll the principals to ask about available seats for the 21-22 school year, and this will require a school committee vote because you do have to vote school choice. So after having polled the principals, you can see on this chart the number of openings that we are projecting for next year for our students, and so we're looking to potentially have 33 seats available. And on the left, you can see what our numbers are currently. Currently, we have 70 students who choice into the district. We have 272 that choice out of the district. And so we're going to work on trying to bring those students back into the fold as well. And so, you know, those are some of the things that we really want to do moving forward. But anyway, with the committee's blessing, we can get the process started. How it works is that there are 2 choice points, one in July, or one by July 1st and the second by November 1st if there are seats available. And parents apply for school choice if they're coming from another municipality. If there is a sibling that is already enrolled in the school department and there's a seat available at the grade level, they get first priority. If there are more seats available or more applicants, I should say, then there are seats available, then it has to be done by a lottery system. And I have in the past done the pull a rabbit out of a hat name thing. So that's how that process works. So it is a lottery process unless there is a sibling already in school. So with the school committee's blessing, we can start to advertise this and get this process moving.
Do you want to do the motion now, Dr. Bull?
Sure.
Okay. Member Ekstrom, I see. Can you wait for the discussion portion? We'll do the
Absolutely.
motion. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the school choice numbers
Motion.
as presented for
Would you like a motion?
21-22. I think that's good.
So moved.
Second,
Member
Rita
Collins, and
Gardner.
a second.
Rita Gardner.
Okay, a second from Mayor Rita Gardner. As you discuss, I am going to take the little one up for bed, and I will be back in 15 minutes or less. Member Ekstrom will continue.
And with that, I will ask my question. Is that school choice out number higher than usual?
I haven't had a chance to look very far back. It is an uptick, and these are numbers as of December 22nd. There are 4 data points that the state uses each year to know what they're going to either reimburse districts for or to assess districts and municipalities for. So these are the numbers as of December 22nd. And I do believe, I didn't get a chance to dig back very far, but I do believe it is an uptick from the prior year. It may be due in part to, I'm thinking that there were other districts that were at least having some form of in-person learning while Greenfield was remote. So hopefully we'll get some of those friends back in the fall.
Well, so I guess that begs my next question then. If those people who've choiced out decide to come back, does that affect the number of seats that we have available to be choiced in?
No, our principals have made sure that they can provision, because we also know that some families chose to homeschool this year rather than to have children be remote. So these numbers are based on having that margin of being able to take our own students in first.
Perfect. Thank you.
A question. At the K-5 level or K-4 level, do we indicate which schools have the openings?
I can tell you right now that those are Federal Street school numbers. Newton is looking at some fairly large class sizes, so they chose not to. And Discovery School at Four Corners has several families that chose homeschooling this year, so she was not feeling comfortable with offering school choice seats, figuring that those families would be coming back if we're full on in person next year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Secretary Johnson-Musad, you had your hand up as well, I believe. You're on mute, hon.
I think my question got answered. So when folks choose to homeschool, that's included in school choice out. It doesn't.
It is not. Actually,
Oh, okay.
you actually unenroll them from the school rolls. They have no Chapter 70 reimbursement or whatever. They're not considered part of what is known as foundation enrollment for the purposes of budgeting.
So those 272 are all people who are going to different schools, and our district is paying their district for them to be enrolled in the other district.
Actually, the state assesses the city side for school choice out. The school district gets the school choice in because the premise is that anybody who has choiced into the district, you get it's been $5,000 since the law was passed, plus there's a special education increment that you can apply for special education services. And so those that comes to the school because it's considered the extra money that you need to educate those children, buying supplies and materials and all of those things that have to happen for kids choicing in. But the school choice out actually gets charged on the city side.
Rita Gartner,
Please.
which is why that number 272 is really something that we need to correct. And I don't expect you, Superintendent Houle, to do it. I think it'll take, before September 1st.
We'll give it a shot, but probably won't get it across the finish line.
Do your best. But it is important, and it does affect the finances on both sides. So it's important to make sure that our new superintendent has a commitment to make that number a much smaller number. And I think we can do it. I honestly do.
Yeah.
This is a result of COVID, and I have no doubt that we'll find somebody who can take that number down a little bit.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that there is a certain percentage of that would be special needs students that don't receive the services that they need to be successful. And because we can't offer it for whatever reason. So there is, I'm quite certain, a percentage of that a number.
Well, you're required under the law to provide special needs services, whatever the IEP has to say. It's just, it could be another district has a program in-house where for us it might be an out-of-district placement. So a parent might choose to want to have their kids in a public school setting versus in an out-of-district placement. So it's those kinds of decisions. But certainly any child who has services that are required on an educational, individualized education plan, we do provide them.
Member Hollins, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that some of the surrounding schools that are small have specialty programs. And one of the reasons we developed the Math and Science Academy was to attract parents that wanted a specialty program so they could find it in Greenfield. And that program quickly drew in people. I think there were 120 when we moved it. We voted to move it and not close it. I think in the subsequent years, for different reasons, it's been pretty much taken apart. But that was an effort to attract and keep parents that wanted something unique in grades 5 to 7. So we have to think about that because some schools do have specialty themed programs within their district, and parents that want choices either go find them or you have them in your system. Thank you.
Any more questions on this topic? Member Karen, I haven't heard anything from you. Member Wall, nor you. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and let the superintendent move on. Oh, we have to do a vote on this. My apologies. Sorry. Are we good?
All good.
All right.
I
So,
don't think we voted, did we? We made the
We haven't-
motion, but,
No.
oh,
right,
okay.
we have not voted. I was going to ask either Susan or Member Johnson Musad if he wrote it down to repeat it back to us. Someone must have it somewhere.
I did not write it down, but the motion was essentially to approve the school choice allocations as presented. So are we ready to
So
vote?
let's do a roll call. The chair isn't present, but we still do have a quorum. So let's go ahead and do a vote.
Member Karen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom,
Yes.
Member Hollins,
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad, I'm a yes. Chair Poyetti's away. Member Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Wiedegardner,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. So just to move on to end of the year activities, just a reminder that Greenfield High School is planning their graduation at Veterans Field for ticketed guests only on June 5th with a rain date of June 6th. That's going to be preceded by a graduation rehearsal on June 1st and a senior celebration. And then on June 2nd, senior awards will be presented in a virtual ceremony. I do want to just again make the public aware that it has come to our attention that there is a social media movement out there to host a Greenfield prom. I want to remind the public that per the commissioner's orders, we are not hosting a prom this year as a public school district. Now, there are some other districts that have gone ahead and done that anyway, but the commissioner has said that we should not be having proms, and so we are following his lead on that. So I just want to again make the public aware that we are doing a senior celebration, which Principal Patnode has commandeered some food trucks who are going to come in and do a luncheon for the kids for free of charge, and they'll have a chance to bring their beach towels and their beach chairs and sit out on Veterans Field and enjoy each other's company on June 1st together as a group. And so that will be the celebration. So we are not hosting a prom. So we just want to make, again, families aware of the fact that there is no prom. We're doing that to follow all of the COVID protocols and all of the requirements by the state. We also want to remind people that attending that event is kind of at their own risk because it is not a school-sponsored event, and that there could be an unintended consequence of potentially contracting COVID and not being able to participate in graduation. So we hope that our students are going to make good decisions and think carefully about participating in the school sanctioned events that will follow all of the COVID protocols. During the last week of school, we are starting to plan for various celebrations to recognize students as they move on to the next level and such. So things are beginning to bubble up for activities. And again, we will be following protocols, working with the Board of Health, following limits for audience size and all of those kinds of things and participation in those activities. It's also the week of Juneteenth, which the governor has just declared as a holiday in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to recognize the freedom of Blacks from slavery. And so I passed along to our leadership team some resources that I found that are really quite interesting about the holiday and have encouraged them to share them with their teachers in an effort to try and educate students on the importance of Juneteenth. The last day of school for us is Friday, June 18th, and I do know that there are districts around us that are canceling school and going around to the next week. We don't believe that's a smart decision on our part because the last day of school is a half day. So if we cancel school on a Friday and we go around the corner to Monday with a half day of school, we're really not using the day wisely or well. So we're just recommending that we continue on with the school calendar as you had voted it, with June 18th being that last half day. And what we're proposing is that we would do a Juneteenth holiday observance for our 12-month employees on June 21st, and that would be a holiday for them.
And you're looking
So-
for a motion and a vote on that, I believe, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to request a motion so that we can
Sure.
do a
What I would need from the committee is to just have a motion to retain the last day of school as Friday, June 18th, and to afford Greenfield Public School year-round employees June 21st as the holiday observance of Juneteenth.
So move.
I'll second that. Any
I guess
discussion?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I haven't had a lot of time to think about it, but I guess I appreciate the encouragement for education around this important holiday and sharing of resources for folks around it. There's something different about actually pausing activities to observe something versus kind of continuing because we have the schedule set up and you know, obviously the employees would get to recognize the day off on June 21st, but the students wouldn't get kind of the same heft of the community saying this is important enough that we're stopping activities, we're not going about business as usual, and we're going to have a half day on Monday. I don't know. That's just I'm not decisive about it, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. I'd like to hear other people's thinking.
If I might, Member Ekstrom, if I could respond.
Please do.
I think what we're thinking is that this is a very much a teachable moment for our students. And so being able to infuse activities into that last week of school to make sure that students are aware of the significance of the holiday, we feel is actually a better use of time than pausing school activities. So our feeling is that, you know, this is probably a better educational use of time than having a day off on a Friday to turn around and have a half day of school on Monday that probably won't be attended by many families because they'll be done. And so the use of that day as anything constructive, I don't see that as being an educationally sound decision. Again, it makes much better educational sense to be able to talk to our students about Juneteenth, what it means, its significance, its place in history, and to build an awareness in the children of what the day is about. So that's was our thinking, was to do it from an educational perspective.
Mayor Wadey Gardner.
Yes, thank you. I support that sentiment, Superintendent, and but I'm curious, do you have or will you supply us with a general idea of what those awareness activities are going to be?
Sure. I think they're still in the planning stages. As a matter of fact, I just signed off on some requisitions because part of the resources I shared was a rather rich list of children's literature. And so I have signed off on some requisitions from our principals to order some of those pieces of literature so that those books can be shared with the children and some discussions. There's some great lesson plans in the resources that I shared that teachers can certainly use and adapt to their classroom situations. There are some great videos, you know, that again with discussion guides that could again be a catalyst for discussion amongst the students about the importance of Juneteenth, what it means to our country as a history, and what it means to the freedom of people who were enslaved. And you know, so I'm looking forward to that, but certainly I can ask the principals to share with me what actually got done.
Well, thank you. I can think back both to when I was on school committee and what the last week of school meant, which was not much going on. And then I can think back to my own point in time when Juneteenth awareness should have been part of our lexicon, but it wasn't. So I appreciate that you have a plan for that last week of school that could be actually quite important for all of our students. I know that it's catch as catch can with how much they're paying attention, but I truly appreciate the effort, so thank you.
Any other comments?
I guess just one one more. I mean, I guess, I think I'm going to vote for your proposal, Superintendent. I'd like us to think a little bit more about this for next year. Um, I understand that you're, building in the educational component, and that's important. But also, we do that around Martin Luther King Day, and we still take the day off. So I don't know. I think it's important to actually consult the community. I don't think we necessarily know exactly what the Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities think about, our decision on this. And it is a very tight time frame. So I think if we can we'll have more time to give it more thought for next year, and hopefully receive feedback from the community about what they think about this as a way of observing it when it does run up right against the school year. I'm not sure necessarily people would perceive it as a gift to make them have to come back for a half day the following after the weekend. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, you're spot on in terms of looking at this from the fact that the governor just declared the holiday, so it hasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, the law is less than 2 weeks old, so we're out right up against it, as it were. I think when you use Martin Luther King Day, having a day off in the middle of January is a different animal than
Right.
the very end of
Very
June. So
different. Yeah.
I think, I think again, that's something that certainly needs to be taken a look at. And I think that before the next meeting, we'll also take a look at next year's calendar, just in case we need to tweak that a little bit to make sure that this gets infused into that calendar.
Mhm.
Yeah, Glenn, I agree. Point well made.
Yeah, as do I.
Anyone else? I can't see someone. Member Hollins, do you have any thoughts? Member Karen? Okay, seems to me we're ready for a vote. Secretary Johnson.
I'm going to say I agree with Glenn. I think we really need to look at it for next year to make sure how we handle it. That's all.
Yep. All
You ready
right.
for the vote?
I believe so. Secretary Johnson Musad.
Member
Go.
Karen? Oh,
Yes.
okay. Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Yes.
Member Hollins?
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad, I'm a yes. Chair Proietti? I
I
guess she's
just
not.
returned. I'm going to abstain.
Abstain. Okay. Member Wall?
Yes.
Mayor Rita Gardner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Great discussion around that.
Thank you. So moving on, my colleague from TMS, Justin Martin, is here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let him take over this part of the report. Justin? Justin, you're muted.
Anyone else get the irony of that?
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
The communications consultant is unmuted.
There you go. Well, what I had started to say was that it's nice to see everyone again. It's been a quick couple of months here with you all. And I wanted to take a few minutes to give you an update on what we're doing internally here in terms of Greenfield's public schools image and messaging and how we can improve the school-to-home communications. Just as a quick overview, we've completed the communications audit. And you may or may not remember that when we spoke earlier, that is a purposeful third-party view of what a parent moving into Greenfield would discover if they moved in and wanted to learn about the schools solely from social media or from the Greenfield Recorder or from the website, and what they might find at Town Hall, for example, or City Hall in this case. And so that piece is done. We have a communications plan that we're just about wrapping up that I'm going to run through with the principals next week and get their feedback on that and share that with you all as well. And also in the next week to 10 days, we're going to be launching a communications survey. And the purpose for that, as I mentioned a few months back or a few weeks back, however long it's been here, to really understand from the community how and where they get information now and how and where they would prefer to get their information. And, we may think that because we've gotten a story in the Greenfield Recorder, for example, that most of our parents have seen that story or read that story, because we certainly have read it. But we may find in the survey results that 60% of our parents actually are getting their information from Facebook or from their website alone. And so looking at that in the audit and deciding, okay, well, we need to get more information to the Greenfield Recorder. We also need to do a better job of getting more information on our Facebook pages, or partnering with, for example, the Friends of Newton PTO Facebook page, and finding out ways that we can continue to spread information about the schools. Another piece of this that we'll be looking at, and what I would like to work on with this with the school committee in the coming months, would be on some of our communications policies. In talking to the chair, I think about 5 or 6 weeks ago, I was unsure what policies we had in place for communications as a school committee. In some cities and towns, there's a policy, for example, that says that only the school committee chair talks to the media. That may be something that you all want to explore. It may already be on the books, I'm not sure. Or it may be something where you say, no, we all prefer to have, 5 voices or 7 voices and what have you. In other communities, they say that the superintendent is the sole spokesperson for, issues X, Y, and Z, unless it has to do with a certain vote. So, and then also working with you on best practices in terms of school board leadership as it relates to communications, and how do we communicate to the public at large? How do we make sure that the votes that we take that are important to us and important to the community are received in the community? Oftentimes we take a vote and we really feel good about that, but there's a breakdown between what the reporter covers, what winds up in the paper, and so forth. And so making sure that those things that we deem are really important, that we have the mechanisms and tools in place to convey those votes. Just a quick update on the plan itself. I just wanted to give you sort of an overview that, the goal obviously for the communications plan at this time for Greenfield will be focusing on improving awareness, understanding, and appreciation for the Greenfield Public Schools. We know that there's been some ups and downs the last couple of years, and we want to start to really make sure that people understand what's going on now, that what the school committee is doing, and where the school committee is taking, and the leadership team is taking the Greenfield schools in the coming years. And, to a little more detail on that, focusing on 3 audiences, one being parents of school-aged children, obviously, but just as important is the residents in town that have no children currently in the schools, and to make sure they understand why it's still important to at least have some working knowledge of this. And then working on themes, developing a narrative for the schools, for the school system on the whole, implementing a true crisis communications plan, and then some of the tools and tactics we use in terms of annual surveys to parents to kind of take the temperature of the community so that they understand the budget process, for example, that they understand some of the decisions that are made at the superintendent and the school committee levels. And then also if there are ways that we can further amplify our use of social media. We know that a lot of parents are now on Facebook. We know that a lot of students are not. And so deciding which social media tools are going to be ones that we endorse and that we use, how we use them, and then what processes and perhaps policies we put in place there as well. And then starting to really strengthen the brand, so to speak, of the Federal Street School, of Newton, of Discovery, of Greenfield Middle School, of the high school, of making sure that parents are aware of the value that a vibrant high school brings to its community. So that's sort of where we're headed, as well as lastly on this is some other video opportunities that we're going to begin doing more of. Some of these obviously be connected to the interim superintendent and the role that she has been playing. Certainly some of the initiatives that are in place, and then when you are ready to find that next permanent superintendent, some of the things that we can do to help celebrate her or his arrival and start to position that transition as well. So that's sort of the update of where we are and where we're at and what's coming next.
Thank you, Justin. It looks like we have a question right off from Mayor Rita Gardner. Go ahead.
Thank you, Justin. I think your communications plan is very thorough and I like it. I would once again invite you to coordinate with the city of Greenfield in those efforts to partner in promoting the Greenfield School District.
Absolutely.
Because we do also have a Facebook page that is very accurate. If you need Keith Barnacle, our communications director, to provide you with the numbers of people, not just with parents in the school, with children in the schools, but from outside, he'll be happy to provide you with that. So I just want to encourage you to communicate with him as well on this plan.
That is my intent. Thank you.
I will let him know.
Great.
Thank you both. I see a hand from Member Hollins. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we have in whatever we're doing, we have to really be, very modern or current in our use of titles and pronouns. I just think there's a lot of levels of sensitivity in some of the work I've been doing in the schools. We've tried to, I'll just leave it at that, but I would worry that we'd send something out that might offend someone because we didn't think of that, how to use pronouns these days or to not use them. Thanks. I don't know if that made sense, but hope
It does.
it did.
Noted. Yes.
Thanks, Member Hollins. Oh, yeah, Secretary Johnson moves on. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I guess this is kind of an elephant in the room from my perspective about how we as a school committee respond to an important issue, which is this anonymous website that went up several months ago. It claimed to be for transparency and sunlight. However, it was published anonymously, and it was published with a website and a URL that's very similar to the Greenfield Public Schools URL. It obviously shared its own narration of events, as well as links to actual emails from between different school committee members. I think that it did not portray the Greenfield Public Schools in the best possible light, and I think it did not necessarily make our district look appealing for a superintendent or other staff who might be interested in applying. I would really like us to have a coordinated communications response to this. It hasn't been on an agenda to discuss. I'm wondering if any thought has been put into that issue and a response from us as a committee to that website.
Secretary Johnson, I'm gonna interrupt. I don't see any need to respond to an anonymous smear campaign. Period.
Well, we've hired a communications consultant to work with us, so I guess I'm interested in a professional opinion about that.
Go ahead, please, Justin. Go ahead.
Sure. There, really briefly, there are a couple of ways for to respond to this. One certainly is that the more attention that we give it, or the more that we talk about it, the more it perpetuates and lives out there. It's certainly something I've been monitoring and seeing what some of the issues have been. It is something that perhaps that as it goes on, if there's something that is warranted in a true response, that we could certainly consider making that. But to the chair's point, at this time, it is an anonymous site with what I can tell is not too many hits. From what we have an app that we use to see. You can look in to see what the attention it's getting. So it's certainly one of a firsts for me to figure out how to deal with this specific incident. And I wish I had a better answer for you than that, but that really is the truth on that one.
Question?
Thank you.
Collins?
Go ahead, Member Hollins. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask the question in our warrant. This the one that I just read and signed. There's something I've never seen before I can't think quickly what the name was, but it had something to do with a subscription for archiving social media or something, and I didn't understand what that was. It was 10 accounts, and I didn't know if you knew something about that. I don't
I do
do
not.
social media,
Yeah,
so I
it's
don't.
not a question for, it's not a question for Mr. Martin.
It
We can,
isn't. It was. It's. I'm just
go
asking
ahead.
because
It looks, Dr. Hool, go ahead.
Sure. It just is a way for the district to archive anything that goes out via social media from whether it's class accounts or whatever else, because by federal law, all communications must go through the school department, emails, etc. That students have school emails. Staff have school emails. It's why you all have school emails, because by law we are required to archive those things. We are also required to archive social media outlets that are used by whatever the student activities might be or whatnot. So that's what those subscriptions are, like Facebook pages for the schools, etc. And so that's just helping us comply with the federal law.
thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Other questions for Justin Martin? Not seeing or hearing anyone. Thank you, Mr. Martin, for joining us tonight. I'm looking forward to working on some more details related to all the stuff that you talked about. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you all.
Hey, I'm gonna keep moving, Chair Prietti.
Yep.
That's all right.
Sounds good. Keep moving.
All right. So two quick things. Number one, as we get through subcommittee reports, you will notice that we're going to be looking for some extra meetings that we've already even started to talk a little bit with budget and finance. Policy is another big one that we're going to need to again move some policies through, and when we get to that portion of the meeting, we will talk about that. So that we can begin to do that. We're probably going to need at least one more school committee meeting this month. I know how excited you all are about that, so stay tuned, and we'll try and figure out a time before the night ends. But because of the target focused monitoring visit that's coming up, we just need to get some things moved through the pipeline as quickly as we possibly can. The second thing is that we've had 2 generous donations made to our school community. The first being a $500 donation that was made to Discovery School at Four Corners by the ExxonMobil Education Alliance. And then so that is a generous gift that certainly Four Corners can use to help do some things around the school. And it's actually because of their proximity to a gas station not far from them, so that's a check that they get on an annual basis. The second donation has been here for a little while, and I just became aware of it not too long ago. That Bay State Franklin Medical Center actually donated $775 worth of gift cards to assorted and various businesses in the town, CVS, other kinds of places with the intent, and some of them were like Visa gift cards and whatnot, with the intent of us being able to purchase supplies to be able to assist with schooling for children this year. So those are 2 donations that will need the school committee's approval to accept.
We can go ahead and do that right now if that works.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. So I would take first a motion to accept the $500 donation to the Discovery School at Four Corners from the ExxonMobil Education Alliance.
So moved.
Second, the mayor.
Second, Ekstrom.
Member Ekstrom with the second. Any discussion on that? Right. We'll go ahead and just go to a roll call vote, please.
Member Karen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom,
Yes.
Member Hollins,
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad. I'm a yes. Chair Prietti,
Yes.
Member Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Wiedegardner.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And we'll go right into the second one. I motion to accept the $775 donation of gift cards for student supplies from Bay State Franklin Medical Center.
So moved.
The mayor and a second.
Second. Jean.
Oh, that was Jean. Okay. And any discussion? Let's just go to a roll call vote, please. Oh,
No.
Is there a discussion? Go ahead.
There is. I would
go
like, given that they are Visa cards and not cards to different businesses in town, I would like some assurance that we are actually going to spend that money locally, which I think was the intent.
Yep, which we can certainly do.
How are you going to do that?
We will, when we figure out how we're going to expend those funds, we will make sure that they are done through local businesses. So here in town, whether, office supplies, other kinds of concerns that would be things to help students, and be happy to report back to the committee on how those funds were spent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Karen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom,
Yes.
Member Hollins,
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad. I'm a yes. Chair Prayati,
Yes.
Member Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Wiedegardner.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you all. Are we
Right,
still
and
moving along with the superintendent's report, right?
we are. One last thing.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So, in your packet, I fleshed this out in a little more detail, but just to sort of piggyback on an earlier conversation about making Greenfield an attractive place for students to attend, we really are feeling the need, as I've been part of what I've been tasked with since coming here, is to kind of take a look at central office and how we are organized to do the work that we do within our district, and working with the administration and just taking a look at some things. We really feel like the reestablishment of a department at the district level that is devoted to the core work of the district, which is teaching and learning, to make sure that we have what is a rigorous and equitable educational program for all students in the district, no matter what school they attend and when. So as I've been doing some of the needs assessment stuff and working with the senior leadership team, we've identified some needs that this is the core of the work of the district. How are we educating our students? Are our curricula aligned with the state benchmarks for learning? Are we promoting deep thinking? Are we having project-based learning where kids can really get their hands on learning? Are we promoting student agency? All of those things. Are we sure that there's equitable access to the curriculum and high impact instructional practices for all students? One of the things that I've discovered is that because there has not been district coordination, that the work is currently occurring in silos. Each school seems to be doing its own thing, and there's not a clear pathway around both horizontal and vertical alignment in the district. And so it begs the question of, are we truly providing equitable access to rigorous curricula and high impact instructional practices for all of our students? And I think everybody's working very hard. This is not meant to be a critique of the work that is being done by the district, but it is not being done in a coordinated fashion. I'm always one who tries to look through the eyes of a student, and is my learning experience different based on some of the things that are going on. And our well-intentioned helpers from the state have exacerbated some of this silo work, to be honest. And so we're really feeling like at this point, we really need to get back to a coordinated plan of action. This is not new to this district. You've had a director of curriculum in the past, but that we really need to get back to, because this is the core of what our students should be getting together, and what is it that we need when we think of equity. And the superintendent in Ethel Royalston, who actually is a woman of color, defines equity as making sure that all students get what they need. And I think that's a great definition. And are we doing things as a district that make sure that every child gets what they need? And so that's one of our concerns. Another concern is the learning loss that may have happened as a result of pandemic teaching, the mental health issues that we are seeing emerge amongst students, that as we get into sort of a post-COVID place, we need to pay some attention to those issues as well as to the issues of equity. I have done a preliminary look-see at some of our MCAS data, and it points in the direction of a curriculum issue, that there's not some real good coordination there. I'd love to do a workshop with you on data sometime in July, if you're up for it. Data are fun. You can make them fun, despite that they might be boring. But I think again that would be something for you as a school committee to be focused on, that as you're getting ready to interview your finalist candidates, that you really have a good handle on what some of these instructional needs are, because this is the person who's going to have to help carry the mantle moving forward. So what we're looking at doing is to fund this to a savings to upgrade a grants administrator position to the position, to not the person itself, but that position, that we would use the funding for that position to the role of the assistant superintendent. What we would do is have this position be one that would take care of grants. Right now you have a grants administrator, but they are not, this person's not a licensed administrator. So being able to have somebody who is coordinating all of the curriculum efforts should also coordinate all of the grant funding and all of the pieces that make all of this work. So savings from that would help fund the position at about 40 or 50%, depending on the salary range. We'd look at a combination of local funds, grants, using ESSER funds, because again, this person out of the gate would be spending some time attending to learning loss, so it certainly would be an allowable expense under ESSER, and then it just would be something that you as a committee would need to think about in terms of sustainability post-ESSER funding. So I did put in the proposal after doing some looking around at various salaries for this kind of position, of a range for the salary to be somewhere in the 125 to 135 range. I think that's reasonable for this kind of position, particularly since you would be looking for somebody with an assistant superintendent license who could also act as the superintendent in the superintendent's absence, so that you've got that backup occurring. If I get run over by a bus tomorrow, that could be a problem, so you want to make sure that you have that kind of support. So what we'd be looking at is not only the funding piece, but to get a job description together, and then to post as soon as possible for this, and to pull together a screening committee that would be administrators, teachers, and hopefully a school committee representative as well, with the goal to fill this during the summer of 2021, so that this person can get an office established, to get things up and running in time to start the school year. They'd be responsible for professional development activities across the district, mentoring new teachers, making sure that program is working, making sure that our federal grants that service regular education kids are part of this whole coordinated curriculum plan. So, like I said, the written report I gave you has a lot more detail about this, and I do know that the hour is getting late, so I'll try and stop my summary there and leave that open for discussion.
Would you like a motion?
That would be lovely.
I'd like to move that the school committee authorize the superintendent to reorganize positions in the central office to create a curriculum office with an assistant superintendent position that handles curriculum. That's the motion.
Okay. And do I have
I'll second. Second by Ekstrom.
Member Ekstrom has the second. And discussion.
Discussion.
Member Collins and then Mayor Rita Gardner.
I've been talking about this for at least 3 years, and I want to just summarize what's important. You need an office that's a person who has the capacity to do assessment, the grants, curriculum, professional development, and in some cases hiring to know what the demographics are of teachers, where you need a reading person with experience. You can student teachers, substitutes, all of that. But it has to also have a secretary, or you don't have an office where the work continues even when people turn over. That's our biggest issue. So I completely support this. It is the work. It's a great need here, and we need this person and a whole office established with the materials, reference materials, and there must be some secretarial or administrative assistant support, or we don't really have anything that continues as people turn over.
Mayor Rita Gardner, go ahead.
I was on mute, but now I'm not. Member Hollins and I agree. We might be slightly divergent. I think this is a great idea. I go back to the hiring of the previous superintendent when we asked for a curriculum director. I like the way this plan has been fleshed out. I think it's great. I support the idea of it. I just want to make sure that we understand what the role of that person is. And I think you've set that out fine, so I don't question that. That does not negate the fact that we also need, at some point in the near future, an assistant superintendent who is, this is, as I understood your explanation, has to do with curriculum, which is something that we've been asking for as a city for a long time and haven't really succeeded. So I applaud it, and it is well thought out, and I appreciate that. I also want us to make sure that as we move forward, we might need an assistant superintendent. I think we do need an assistant superintendent who does the other type of day-to-day work, so that the person that we're hiring for this position isn't someone that has to switch gears all of a sudden and figure out about snow days or this, that, or the other thing. So we need an assistant superintendent who can handle the other type of day-to-day work. So I'm certainly going to support this because it's something we've been asking for, and I do appreciate the detail that you have given us. I just don't want us to stop there. It may not happen in this coming fiscal year, but I just want to say to the committee, we can't just stop here and say, oh, now we have an assistant superintendent. Because this person's job, if I read, I haven't seen the real job description, but if I read what's here, has a lot to do and has a lot of ground to make up. So I appreciate the effort, and I will definitely support this, but with the caveat that we continue to figure out how we might have assistant superintendent who could take over the other day-to-day.
I have a
Thank you, Mayor
comment.
Rita Gardner. Yes, please go ahead, Secretary Johnson was up.
When I was applying to be on this committee, and so I came in for my interview, and we had to spend a lot of time hanging out in the waiting room before we came in for our interview. And while we were there, there were a group of civics teachers there from different grades who were making a presentation to the school committee about how, because of the state had required like the whole civics curriculum to be overhauled, and they had to kind of put it together with little bits of Band-Aid and tape and do it. And they were embarrassed to be the ones at the conference about this who were not like an assistant superintendent. So I think it's so important that we do this. I'm really appreciative of your leadership and of the other committee members who seem supportive of this. I'm very excited about our July data meeting. And there's another piece of data, and I wonder if it might be useful to have at the same meeting, but are we still having the youth risk behavior surveys done in the schools? And if so, could we have a presentation on that as well? There's a lot of kind of overlap between our educational outcomes and substance use behaviors and things like that.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I just got the data. I mean, it's hot off the press. I have skimmed it, but I have not really digested it yet. But certainly we can include that as part of a data workshop because, yeah, we should be looking at the whole child, not just, you know, the academic piece, but, you know, the behavioral health, you know, the whole package. So it's important that we have a coordinated approach that looks at these issues through an equity lens. Are we providing equitable experiences for all of our students? And I think that's the core question that we want this person to be constantly asking and working toward. I think to go back to your comment, Mary Wieter Gartner, during Justin's presentation about how to make Greenfield a more attractive place. I think if we have strong curriculum and strong offerings for students, and we are doing things that are equitable and giving students what they need, parents will either not choose to go elsewhere, they'll choose to come back home, or other people will choose to come here. So I think it's key to growing that part of what happens in our schools as well.
I completely agree.
Other questions and comments on this issue?
This is my wheelhouse. This is my first love. So I'm very excited to hear an enthusiastic response. So, you know, if we
Yes.
bring somebody in, I'm more than happy to provide some mentoring and support to that person because this is work I have done my whole career. So I'm excited about it.
I have one question. I fully support this. I know that this is the step we need to take with this part of our responsibilities. The savings there's some savings that comes from eliminating the grants administrator position, and that doesn't come without some concern for how that will unfold. And I'm wondering if you can give us a sense of that, because I do know that the incumbent in that current position has been with the district for a number of years.
Yes, yes, she has. And I am a person who is fully transparent. So she and I have already had this conversation because the last place I want her to read about this is in the Greenfield Recorder.
Sure, and
with
that
all
was
due
not
respect, tomorrow morning. You know, I would never have this kind of conversation in public without having a conversation
Sure.
with that person as well. And so she and I have had a conversation. You know, I have promised her that I would keep her updated and informed as all of this unfolded, and that we would figure out how to, you know, deal with an exit plan. She already knows, Andy knows her work really well. As a matter of fact, does Nadine, who's sitting here with us, and we have volunteered letters of reference, you know, if she chooses to move on, all of those kinds of things, and whatever we can do to support her next steps. So that conversation has been had, and certainly that's just how I operate. It would happen
Right, and
long
I
before this
have
would
no
happen.
question about that. Yeah, I was not concerned about that piece at all, and I do want to recognize that we that this is not the place for any personnel issues. The kind of follow up or part B to the question is your proposal really says this new person can do that work, and I don't know enough about this to know how the scope of the job is impacted by that person having the entire grants responsibility. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yes, because in a former life, when I did this work as a curriculum director in a district, I was the grants maven. And because grants are not a separate piece, but they are an integral part of the entire package of how you organize and work through the resources that you need to do the work that you need to do in any district. So it's not just what's going on in the general fund, but it's how the general fund and the grants can work together to make sure that you're providing a good coordinated high quality curriculum for students. So having the person who's in charge of pulling the curriculum together to also be the person who's in charge of writing the grants to help resource that is able to have their eyes on both the general fund, the local funding, as well as the grant funding to make sure that everything gets hit and that, you know, if you're looking at reading and math instruction for struggling students, that's a Title I thing. So you know you can pull from that to help fund that curriculum work. Whereas, you know, world languages, which just got a brand new framework first since 1999, I hate to say, you know, but that's not something you can fund with Title I, so that has to come from the local budget. So knowing where all the parts and the pieces are, that's really a good way for that person to work through the resources.
I think, I guess my questions around that aren't really related. Well, now that I hear you talking about it, they're not really related to the grants or the curriculum piece of it. I expected that this was broader than just curriculum. So I guess my concern is mislaid. We have created a system, just like in so many other places in public education, where our funding isn't available for the things that we need without going out to get it from other sources besides where everyone thinks our money comes from, whether it's the city or the state or the federal government. How unfortunate for all of us, because what I also hear you saying is that this is what we're doing in every school district. It's just how it works. And that pains me, because that's not how you run schools, is by applying for grants to find the right materials and content that you need. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I will bark up a different tree about that.
Yeah. Well, and these are entitlement grants, so you are entitled to the funds. You just have to put in a proposal. It's not like you're competing. Some of the grants at the state level are competitive, but the majority of them are entitlements. So they're based on your poverty rate, your student enrollment, all of those things. And the state says you have $100,000, for example, to spend. But because we are the federal government, we are going to tell you how to spend it, So it's being able to take that pot of money and say, okay, I can only spend Title I on materials that help students who are struggling in reading and math. Okay, so that part of my curriculum work, I know I can fund through there because that's the only thing I can spend that money on. We get Title IIA, which again is another entitlement fund, which is to strengthen teacher practice, to mentor new teachers. So, and that's the only thing the federal government lets you spend Title IIA on. So you use those funds to be able to provide professional development that ties into bringing in rigorous curriculum and making sure that instructional practice meets the standards that we want them to meet. So it's just being able to know what pots of money you can pull from to make the whole picture work.
And do those, I think this is my last question, and I appreciate how this has been very eye-opening for me. We speak a lot in this in the school committee, and we have made it a priority to bring more racial justice content, for example, into our schools. Are there options available that meet what we want to be able to do?
Absolutely. There are a plethora of resources. And again, to have somebody who can spearhead the work. I love doing this work, but doing this and being a superintendent, there's just not enough hours in the day. But I mean, to have a committee of professional educators sit with you in a room and go through and vet all of the various resources, whether it be reading, mathematics, racial and social justice, whatever it is, to vet the materials against a set of established criteria that hopefully this person would help set up with the district. Then, and I can see Susan Holland smiling, so I know this is her wheelhouse as well. But, you know, I think that person then puts a process in place. How do we know these are good quality materials versus not so good quality materials? How are we going to shine a light on what makes the best sense for the students in Greenfield? And so having somebody who can just really focus on this work, and it is the core of everything we do, and making sure that that we have equity for all of our students is huge. And I think that's the big lens, the 30,000-foot lens, as it were,
Yeah.
to be able to look at this through.
Thank you. Well, I support this change 100%. It's all this discussion has shown me that we're actually costing ourselves a lot more money with the way our curriculum is currently structured. And this will be long term quite a savings and quite a return on our investment to move forward. So thank you, Dr. Hull, for your patience as we all get our questions answered. That does not need to be the end. Member Holland, you have another question or comment? Go ahead.
I just wanted to add one different comment. One of the reasons I feel so strongly that the office needs to have administrative assistant support is that everything Superintendent has talked about has a date. You know, this money is available, but you have to submit this form by this date, and to use it, you have to report on it on this date. If you don't spend it by this date, you have to send it back. There's a zillion dates that go with this. And the reason secretarial support is so important is that even if the people turn over, somebody gets sick, there's somebody in there with a calendar that says, wait, this is due then, the report's due here, and gathering it up. And without that, I think to your original question, Chair Prietti, is you really, it's a little risky if you don't have somebody managing all this detail stuff, and you don't want your top person to do that, and you want it to be consistent even when people leave. But it never made sense to me that the goals that you put in the grants aren't connected to what you want to do to improve your curriculum through someone who's looking at that. It didn't. So there's a lot of detail work.
Yep. And right now I'm trying to assess whether or not we can handle that administrative support in-house, or if we will need to bring somebody in to specifically be assigned to that person. I have not finished that total analysis of central office at this moment in time. So once I have a better sense of that, I'll come back to you with a proposal about how to staff the clerical piece as well. Because yeah, that is critically important to that person's success.
Wait, when you say we might not be able to do it in-house, you mean we might have to go through a temp agency or a consultancy or something? Or what do you mean by that?
No. I mean, obviously you're going to post and advertise for the assistant superintendent position. I'm looking at our current administrative assistant staff at central office and whether or not the responsibilities could be handled in-house, or if we would need to add to the administrative assistant staff to make sure that everything gets handled well. And
you mean whether we can handle it with existing staff versus expanding the staff of employees of the Greenfield Public Schools. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, correct. So I'm still kind of getting through that piece of it. But I figured if we could at least get this portion started, because obviously we would want whoever the assistant superintendent to be the person who hires that assistant if we aren't able to do it in-house. So that is to come.
And many thanks to our grant administrator for all their hard work, and I'm glad that we had that conversation with them.
Yes, thank you all for your comments. Any other additional comments or questions on this topic? Okay, so let's do a roll call vote. Does anyone need the motion read? Are we good to go? We know what we're voting on? Okay, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Mute. Member Karen?
Yes.
Did
Can you
anyone
hear me?
else hear it? I can now.
I said yes.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry. I didn't hear it for a second. Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Yes.
Member Hollins?
Yes.
Secretary Johnson-Musad? I'm a yes. Chair Prietti?
Yes.
Member Wall?
Yes.
Mayor Weider-Gardner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Excellent discussion.
And if there's any one of you who would like to volunteer to be on the screening committee, well, let me know. We may have to do a lottery. I may have to draw a name out of a hat or something.
Send her an email. Tell you you're interested. That's great. Thank you all for volunteering so quickly. I think, is that the end of the superintendent's report?
It is. Thank goodness.
Thank you. That was great. We moved through a lot of stuff. That was excellent. So our next item is the school committee reports. Let me think if I have anything to report. Let's go right. It's been a long meeting already. Let's go right into the other reports. I don't report unless I absolutely have to. I think we're good. We hear enough from me, right? Member Wall, how about an update on the superintendent search for us?
We are totally into getting applications for this job. There's going to be an orientation for the search committee during the week of May 24th. And we will look at the applications during the next week, which will be the week of May 31st. And we'll start having interviews right after that. So it's all exciting. It's really going to start happening. And I want to tell anybody who has not done so that there is a superintendent search survey on the Greenfield Public School website. And please go and look at it and take the survey if you'd like to have your input into what we ask and what we're looking for. But this is all exciting, and I will be in touch with the search committee very shortly to set up that first orientation. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Thanks, Member Wall. Sure, go ahead, Glenn.
I heard a concern that at least one of the focus groups, they wanted to meet with different constituencies within the community to hear about their interests regarding the new superintendent, and that one of them was scheduled like on a very tight time frame. Are you aware of that, Member Wall?
I believe it all got taken care of. I was not, the search committee and the school committee were asked not to go to the focus groups, but I did hear complaints. I did talk with Liz. I think it all got taken care of.
My understanding, just to add something, I do believe they rescheduled it for a different night.
Yeah, it did.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Any other questions or comments for Member Wall? I'm excited. That's all I can say. It's great to be moving forward. All right, thank you. And how about, do we have a report now from Budget and Finance? You want to just, you're going to schedule a meeting for next week and we'll go.
That's the report.
Great. Okay. And policy and program. And I think we should clear up, I think that Secretary Johnson-Musad, you can clarify if you agree with me. What we have on the agenda for policy and program number 3, I believe the bulleted item that says personnel and collective bargaining and the other 2 bullets underneath that should actually be items 4, 5, and 6.
Exactly.
Everyone's nodding. Okay, so that's my head hurt looking at this.
You're like, why is policy getting into redistricting?
And I finally got it, and I struggled with it for a little bit. I got it, and then a few minutes later, I checked my email, and there was an email from Secretary Johnson-Musad who said, "I think this is messed up," and so yeah. But my brain hurt for a little bit trying to figure out what that was. So for the next item, policy and program, we're going to do 2 policy adjustment groups here. There's the first group, and I'll let you explain, Member Johnson-Musad, is that are ones that we're going to waive the first reading, and then the second group, we're going to do them individually. But go ahead, Glenn, and anyone else who needs to chime in there.
Yeah, and I'll ask Dr. Ekstrom to help me out if I go wrong here. But
Great. Thank you.
essentially, the ones that we're putting forward around waiving the second reading are ones where there either wasn't a big change of content, it was just to kind of make the language more concise, or we're just bringing the policy in line with the law. So we really don't have a lot of leeway there. Am I right about that, Dr. Ekstrom? Are those the
Yes.
ones we can sign there? Great.
Yes.
So. Yeah, and the other ones are more substantive, so we want to go through the whole process. We believe that, making a good faith effort and being able to demonstrate having these discussions, even if we're not, we will have, as Dr. Houle said, an exciting possible second meeting this month, and this will be one of the items to try to get these through their second reading. So we've already scheduled the next policy subcommittee meeting for Friday, 10:30. So we're gonna, any work that we have after tonight's reading, we can go in and do that Friday and then come back, have another meeting sometime this month, and then hopefully get through all of these required changes. Anything you would add, Dr. Ekstrom?
No, you did a great job. Yeah, I think, the only piece that I would just suggest is if any of the school committee members on the first reading, if you have any questions or concerns about any of the proposed languages, in the terminology that we're using, to please reach out to me directly, and I'd be happy to have that conversation with you, because then just for efficiency purposes, I could then bring it back to the policy subcommittee. Because what we're trying to look at is, you have the Department of Education coming in. They're starting June 1st. We did meet with them earlier this week, and they're really adamant about the fact that our student handbook is only from 2016. And there's a lot of laws and a lot of policies and a lot of regulations that have changed. And this will be a significant finding for Greenfield when they come in. So I explained the effort that we're doing. I'm saying how we're trying to do this in the 11th hour and as quickly as possible. So we're trying to also try to be very efficient with what we're doing, and so that we can get the policies passed, so that then we can update the student handbooks. But we really have already gone through 17 policies, that we've had to do. I think 7 of them we were fine, and we were in agreement that we could keep as is and just put into the student handbook. But these are the ones that remained. And in meeting with the Department of Education this week, there were at least 3 and maybe 4 policies that we still need to review on Friday. So hopefully those will just be a waive of a first read and we could put them through. But we will definitely need to meet to do this voting of the ones that are now the first read.
And if my memory is correct, we're going to make the changes to the policy, and then that will result in changes to the handbook, and then the handbook will come back to us for approval as well.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Wow, awesome. Thank you both for all the coordination of efforts on that. So let's go ahead and start with the first one. I'm not clear. Do we need to actually read the whole policy, or can we just do the motion?
No, you can consider that a consent item,
yeah,
and that you could just make a recommendation, that you could just take the wording right there and just say that's your motion.
Okay.
And how do we do a vote by consent? I don't know that we've done one, at least recently.
So what I mean by consent is that you could just state that you're consenting to all of those in one vote. You don't have to do them as separate votes.
So the motion could be, I move to waive the first reading and vote as a consent agenda item to approve the following GPS district policies: JHD, JLCB, and JLCC. Does that work as a motion?
It does, but you don't need to use the word consent. You didn't put it on the agenda as a consent item, so you don't need to. I just used the terminology because in some districts, that's what you do.
Actually, we did put it in the agenda as a consent agenda. That is the actual language in the recommendation.
Oh, okay. Then maybe I'm looking at an older agenda item.
So was that motion as proposed okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I think so.
So would anyone like to make that motion? Do you want me to read it again?
I'll make it.
Okay. Thank you, Secretary Johnson. We saw it in a second. Anyone?
Collins.
Member
I'll
Hollins?
second.
Board people.
I
Member
think
Holland,
we,
I see you have a comment. Go ahead.
just speaking for myself, I at least think we need to say in the record what the name of the policy is. It's one thing if you want to forgo 2 readings, but at least you should say what they are. So we should know what we're voting. I'm not looking at it. I can't look at anything while I'm doing this, but I think that would be a better motion to name the policies.
I did
Thank
name
you.
the policies. Those are their names. And the topic they address is on the agenda.
Okay.
Any for other discussion about these items before we vote? They all look like.
All right, so wait. Well, so what is it that we're voting on? I realize that I sound silly when I say that, but so here's the file IHB, IHBA, IHBA.
Nope, that's not included in this.
Okay.
We are voting on JB, Equal Educational Opportunities, JHD, Exclusions and Exemptions from School Enrollment, JLCB, and Relations of Students, and JLCC, Communicable Diseases. It's on the agenda.
These were in the packet and
So
the
they're-
attachment that was called policies-consent, the PDF
Okay,
file.
consent. All right, fine.
Yeah.
That's
And
what I needed someone to tell me. Thank you.
And just to clarify for anybody too that may, you're recording this, so for whomever's listening to this meeting, these are policies that have already been in place, and there's minor revisions to these policies, and that's why we're stating that it is okay to waive the first read. Those that are in the next one that it's just an FYI at this point, they're just first reads. Those are because either they're completely new policies, or we felt those that were currently present, that you currently had such significant changes that we didn't want to bring it to a consent. We wanted people to read them first.
Yeah, I was clearly looking at the wrong one because I heard you say these are things that have just minor changes, and then the first one that I read was policy on COVID related issues. Like that's not just a change. Anyway.
Okay, so we're clear on which ones we're talking about.
Yes.
Further questions or discussion? I'm not hearing any, so let's go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Member Karen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom,
Yes.
Member Hollins,
Abstain.
Secretary Johnson Musad, I'm a yes. Chair Proietti,
Yes.
Member Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Wiedegardner.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so now we have a group that are first reads. What's the best way to tackle this? Member Johnson Musad or Dr. Ekstrom, do you think we need to just go through individually about these and do a summary of each? What's the best way to do it?
I'm open to any suggestions that however you want to do them, or how school committee has done them. Every school committee does this very differently. So we want to make sure that you're feeling supported in that.
I would recommend that since we're going to be doing a second reading and there is the opportunity to share comments with Dr. Ekstrom and the policy committee, how about we make a motion for the group as a whole and welcome members to have any questions that they have about the policies that they were provided in advance, and then see if we can vote them all together.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Glenn. I know you two have your hands up because you're dying to make the motion, right? And would you like to make the motion, or would you like Member Ekstrom to make it for you? And I agree. I think we can do it as a group, and then have any discussion about individual ones. You're saying no, Member Ekstrom, and go ahead. Try to make the motion before we discuss too much more.
I would like to make a motion to forward these first reads to the policy subcommittee so that they may review them and make suggestions related to changes and bring those to the full school committee with the suggested changes or alterations or edits or whatever. I want them to look at it first.
We already did, Susan.
They already did that.
these.
Oh, never mind then. All right, fine.
Yeah.
So, Susan, let me maybe explain to you what we did. The policy subcommittees, Judy and I brought these to the policy subcommittee for review and recommendations. And so we went through, we did a couple of tweaks if we felt that were needed, but Judy and I had actually already brought them to the subcommittee with the recommendations of revisions, but we used MASC. They have a reference manual, online reference manuals with the most up-to-date policies. So we use that language as a reference to begin with. And so it comes to you as a first read. So then if the school committee has any suggestions or recommendations after you read them, that you could bring that forward to us.
Yeah, I got lost trying to figure out which one I was supposed to be looking at is what I suspect happened.
Comment?
Member Hollins, go ahead, but I'm going to want a motion very, very soon. Go ahead.
Someone asked what has happened historically. It's called first read because they're always read. I don't think I can remember a meeting where there was a policy coming up that wasn't read, that was a change. I just want to mention there's 17 people on the call. It's a public meeting. I don't know how else the public knows what policies we're talking about that affect their school system. That's all.
Are you saying you are asking us to read each of the policies out loud?
I'm just clarifying that that's what first read has always meant in Greenfield. They've been read.
The superintendent has a...
that are publicly available for the meeting. What's happening?
The superintendent has a comment.
Dr. Houle, please go ahead.
Just so you understand, the legal definition of a first read is that it is a warning to the public, basically, that you are about to enact some new policies. So these are in the school committee packet. They are publicly available on our website under the school committee agenda packet. So anybody from the public who wishes to look at these policies and send some of their own feedback in advance of the second reading are welcome to do so. They can send them to me and I will forward them on to Dr. Ekstrom and we can certainly work through them. But that's really the legal definition of a first read, is that this is just a public notification that these policies are about to be enacted. It gives people time to review, give comments, and then the second read comes forward.
Yes, thank you. And that is my understanding and my past practice with other boards that I have served on. So I appreciate that. I'm not out in left field here. Okay. I would like a motion before we go any farther with this. I understand people are confused. I think we're clarified now that we can take a motion on these.
I've got a motion.
Anyone?
Are you ready? I've got a motion.
Go, Glenn.
Yes. Hold on just a second. So I move that we advance the policies listed under first reading on the following policies on the agenda to the policy committee for advancement to the second reading.
I'll second that. That's Ekstrom.
That was Member Ekstrom with the second. I'm going to give Susan Farber the time she needs. Susan, are you okay with that? You can really just copy the items, the names of the policies off of the agenda. We're not changing it at all from what's on the agenda. Okay, further discussion on any of these. I see Member Wall and then Member Ekstrom, please.
I would just like to point out that all of this was in our package of stuff and available to be read before this meeting. It's not a huge surprise that happened at this moment. Just say. Thank you, Glenn, and everybody that put this together.
Yes. Thank you, Member Wall. What did I say? Member Ekstrom? Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm Dr. Ekstrom, I'm really looking to you for some education on this one. The superintendent and school committee should be mindful that attainment of a high school diploma may render certain students ineligible for further services.
Could you please just let me know where you're reading from?
Yeah, under file IHB, IHBA, IHBAA. This is on the policies first read.pdf. And it's on, sorry, page 3 of 18, special education.
So IHBHE?
That's remote
IHB,
learning.
IHB, IHBA, IHBAA, IHBF is what's in parens next to the word special education.
Oh, so you're okay. So in the combined materials, I just found it. It's on page 34 for the materials
okay.
for this.
Apologies.
I don't know where you're reading from.
I have it in a separate.
So you're looking in the materials.
Yes.
Yep. And it
And you're
lists special education as a bullet, and it
Yes.
references that those 4 policies, IHB, IHBA, IHBAA, and IHBF, have this phrasing: the superintendent and
Yes.
school committee should be mindful. So you're looking for an explanation of that.
Yes, because that makes me angry in general that people would become ineligible because they get a diploma.
Okay, you're talking about policy EBCS, is that correct?
No.
For the COVID related?
No.
Special education, the bullet point for special education. So let me see.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, it's within that policy.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
thank
So it's a
within that
subheading.
particular, right, it's one section of that. So it says the superintendent and school committee should be mindful that attainment of a high school diploma may render certain students ineligible for further services. So yes.
How is that acceptable? You explain to me how it would work, because that just.
Yep, I'll explain that. So once a student with disabilities receives a diploma, they no longer receive services from a public school education.
And so it's, even though that they can receive a public education through age 22, if they get the diploma, they won't be able to receive education.
That is true. That is not a Greenfield thing. That's a state piece. However, parents also have a right to work with the special education department in not receiving a diploma until
I know, but that's, I agree in that, but that's just,
Yeah, I didn't make it up, Susan. I wish I
no.
could say to you
And I know that's that, and I'm asking you specifically because I know your background related to this, and that just smacks of inequity to me in all kinds of ways. Not unlike every other thing when I always talk about special education and inequities in general, that just, it's.
I get it. I'm going to cut you off there because
Yeah,
it's
go
so
ahead.
bigger than us. We don't.
I know.
Yeah.
We
can talk about it in a different way at a different time.
Yeah, I know.
Other questions about the policies that we're voting on? Other comments, questions?
This question, there's 8 policies in this collection of first reads, is that correct? 18 pages and 8 policies? Since we're not meeting, I just want to.
2, 3, 4, 6.
Just want to make sure we have some record of.
We have 6.
There were 3 in the first motion, and there are 6 in this second one.
In the first read file that we were sent with the packet that starts EBC-S.
Mm-hmm.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I count 8 in my
There are
file.
6.
Okay.
Can you name them for me so we can clarify, or I can name them for you? What would be
Uh,
easier for you?
I'll just tell you what I have. I have COVID-related issues,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and then I have remote learning,
Yes.
Yeah.
and then a remote learning addendum.
It all depends on how you're counting them. The
That's how I
addendum
counted.
I didn't count as a separate item, so
It's got a separate code. I don't know. Equity, homeless students, ed opportunities for military children, alcohol
No.
use by.
No,
No.
those are not, those are within the policy JFABD, I think is where your confusion is. JFABD is homeless students enrollment rights and services.
And then I have JFABE,
Mm-hmm.
ed opportunities for military children. It's a different
Yep.
code.
Okay. And then there's one more after that, JICH, drug alcohol use by students.
Right. Well, I have drug alcohol use by students, and then I have alcohol, tobacco, and drug use by students.
I think the
Anyway.
question is about how it's organized. Maybe Dr. Ekstrom can shed some light. So on mine, it has the policy and then it lists file : I think it's just the way that the material is organized. Can you shed any light on that, Dr. Ekstrom?
Yeah, let me look at the pieces here.
I just want to be clear what we're voting on, that's all.
Yep.
But it sounds like
It's the 18-page document titled
it's
Policies
18
First Read.
pages.
Yep. That's the right one.
For me, if it has a different code, it's a different item.
Okay, yeah. It's,
Well, is there confusion within the policy and program committee folks who are bringing this forward on how many policies there are? I'm not sensing that anyone is confused except you, Member Hollins, and I'd like to move forward. Do we have other questions about the content? Okay, so let's do a roll call vote. The items we are voting on are 6. First readings on the following policies: EBCS, IHBE, sorry, JBB, JFABD, JFABE, JICH.
JFABE_ED and then JICH, yeah.
Sorry. I got dyslexic for a second there, I think.
It's easy to do with those bizarre codes. They're not, it's not a very humane organizational system, but it's what's used nationally.
Yeah, and I'm not hearing that there's any content questions, which is why I'd like to take the vote. Let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, great. Member Karen. I didn't hear it.
I didn't either. Member Karen? Still with us?
Sorry, yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Ekstrom.
Yes.
Member Hollins.
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad, I'm a yes. Chair Poyetti.
Yes.
Member Wall.
Yes.
Mayor Wiedegartner.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Dr. Ekstrom has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Ekstrom, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just want to help with Susan Holland's question because I feel like it wasn't one of the pieces. I just want to clarify some of the codes. Susan may have changed and the terminology a little different because you'll notice up at the top it says Greenfield current policy, and then the other one is the recommended revised policy. So if you see like the tobacco one, for example, that's why it's 2. One is the current and the other one's the revised version.
That could be the source of the.
Thank you. I did have 8 items. I just was trying to figure it out, but thank you for explaining that.
Absolutely.
Thank you again. Thank you all for that work too. I know that was a lot to push through. I appreciate it.
Major thanks to Dr. Ekstrom for helping us through it.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so as we discussed prior to starting item number 3, policy and program, the next bullet item should actually be item number 4, personnel and collective bargaining, with a sub item there, job descriptions need to be reviewed.
That's me.
Thank you, Dr. Houle.
What I have come across in my wanderings around, again, all things looking at how central office operates, is that pretty much all of your job descriptions are either pretty out of date or in some cases non-existent. So yeah, we really need to start the process. And what I'd like to recommend is that we start the process here at central office. Thank you, Secretary Johnson was on. Anyway, so let me regain my composure now. I'm thinking that we need to really start with central office, particularly with the assistant superintendent position coming up, that those job descriptions probably need a good look, see what we do have in place, if anything, and either need to be done or need to be updated in some way, shape, or form. So that's what I'm suggesting. And I think for the long haul, and it will probably be long after I'm here, that you will want to get on that sort of train to get job descriptions updated and places and times where it impacts, some of your collective bargaining units, getting that input from those various bargaining units with regard to the job description, et cetera, so that we do things in a way that makes sure that everything is up to date. So that's one of the other things in my wanderings around central office that I've discovered needs some attention. So I just would like to suggest to the Personnel and Collective Bargaining Committee that we think about a meeting together, not for the purposes of negotiation, but for the purposes of beginning to do a job description review. So if members are amenable, I will reach out to you outside of this meeting so we can move right along and see if we can't play some what I call meeting bingo and find a mutual date and time that works for everybody.
That sounds wonderful.
That's fine.
Happy to help, and the folks on that committee are Ekstrom, member Karen, and myself.
Mhm.
However we can be of service, we are here.
One might suggest you stop poking around at stuff, Judy.
I do like the visual of Dr. Houle kind of wandering around central office, muttering about
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, like at 10 o'clock at night when I'm done with these meetings.
Yeah. I kind of enjoy that as well now. Thanks for that, Amy. I needed that.
No problem.
Yeah, I stop
Yet
by and
another
say hi to
reason to
Morty
send.
the fish, all the good stuff. So Morty's my friend.
And do we need anything else on that item? Was that it?
That was it. Just to let you
Okay,
know
great.
it's coming.
Thank you. And then we have 2 final committee reports, if there are anything for redistricting or redrawing the district map. I don't want to call it redistricting. Redrawing the district map. Member Wall, do you have a report at all?
No, we have not been meeting.
Okay.
I think we're waiting on Dr. Houle to have free time to meet with us.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh like that.
I know.
Well, and then is it the same Secretary Johnson Rousseau for the Racial Justice Committee? Are you guys in the same situation?
Yes, at our last meeting, we agreed as a committee that we were going to kind of try to focus on getting our standing committees up and running on a regular schedule, and then add the Racial Justice Advisory Committee and the redrawing. And I think there may be an opportunity actually for the committee to look at a future point at whether we might want to combine those efforts, because I think the whole purpose of the redrawing is really to look at equity issues, and it's so key to racial justice. I mean, we can look at ways to organize that work differently, but at any rate, for the time being, we're just trying to get our regular standing committees up and running on a regular schedule.
Yeah, sure. That makes perfect sense. And I would add to this discussion, we were, as a school committee, emailed by a parent that is very interested in looking at start times for the middle and high schools, and looking at whether or not we can move forward with changes that bring in the research that shows older students are really much better served by a later start time. And so I do think that those two subcommittees very quickly will also run into questions around discussion about changing start times. So I think we have to kind of fold that in and begin that piece of the discussion as well. I think the three things are very intertwined. And I think we should be open to suggestions, especially considering where we are with pandemic instruction and returning to in-person learning. So we will move forward with all of that. And my plan is to reach out to that parent who has indicated they are representative of other parents with similar questions and concerns. So we'll add that to the checklist. All right, wonderful. So
I guess, can I say one more thing?
please, of course you can. Yeah,
What
absolutely.
I feel like equity is definitely a lens that we as a committee use in looking at our work, and that the superintendent is using in looking at her work. And I appreciate the resources and attention you're putting on that, and the reports that you give to us, Dr. Houle, on that. I'm wondering if we might be able to have it as equity as a kind of standing item on the superintendent's report, just to have a place for those topics, and just to have a designated place while we're kind of waiting to have the Racial Justice Committee up and running again. Just to get reports on a regular basis on what's happening around equity in the schools.
Sure. As particularly as we begin to spin up the teaching and learning office, that that's the lens and the vision for that position, how we're looking at the job descriptions, all of those things. Sure.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you both. I do believe that is the end of our public agenda for the evening. And we will be calling an executive session, and I will need a motion for that. And we will not be returning to open session. So the first thing we'll do is a motion for executive session, which will be called for MGLC 30A subsection 21, exemption number 2, which is to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. And also exemption 3, which is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, and I do declare. And as I said, the committee will not return to open session. Can I get a motion?
So move, Johnson Musad.
And a second.
Second.
I heard Member Wall, I believe, with the second. And let's just do a roll call vote.
The secretary has to unmute himself. Member Karen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Yes.
Member Hollins?
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad. I'm a yes. Chair Poyetti?
Yes.
Member Wall?
Yes.
Mayor Wiedegardner?
Yes.
Okay. And then a motion to adjourn the public session, please.
So
moved. Second.
Go ahead with the roll call, please.
Member Karen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Yes.
Member Hollins?
Yes.
Secretary
Enthusiastic.
Johnson Musad. I'm a yes. Chair Poyetti?
Yes.
Member Wall?
Yes.
Mayor Wiedegardner?
Yes.
The motion unsurprisingly carries.
And that's at
So we are adjourned
8:38.
8:38 p.m. And let's do a 5. Well, actually, I'll give you a 7. I'm really bad at math.
Yeah, 8:45, reconvene.
8:45. Yes, please.